COVID-19 recovery, helping Hoosiers recover financially, physically, mentally, and socially through services provided by Community Action of Greater Indianapolis. Services include energy assistance, child care, family support, education, training programs, transitional housing, and food assistance. COVID-19 recovery.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. I'm Kelly Vaughn here for WHMB TV 40, and welcome to COVID-19 Recovery, where we try to help you through this pandemic. And, I think one of the biggest challenges we face is dealing with it, not only how it affects us physically, but how it affects us mentally. And I know that's what this is about, to help you through the physical and the mental. Also joining me is our co-host of the show is Al Bracken. He's with us as well. Hey, Al, how are you?
Well, I am fantastic, Kelly. Thank you for that bridge. Again, I'm Al Bracken with Community Action, the co-host of the COVID Relief Program. And CAGI has been involved in programming and as it relates to COVID for the last year or so. And as part of the CARES Act, we started a program called the Community Pandemic Wellness Initiative. And most of our regular viewers are going to remember us talking about that quite a bit. Part of the Community Pandemic Wellness Initiative, we get around to a lot of events, a lot of churches, a lot of community organizations, and we're trying to promote healthy lifestyles. And we're looking at health disparities as it relates to COVID relief. And in those health disparities, we're looking at chronic diseases, diabetes, COPD, which is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, asthma and such, and hypertension. And those are the conditions that we are starting to see that in the Black and Brown communities contribute to negative outcomes, grossly negative outcomes as it relates to COVID relief. Again, part of being able to be out in the community, we get the chance to meet a lot of outstanding folks that are doing a lot of good in the community. And the CPWI program and CAGI is not just about meeting these folks. We're establishing relationships for the future. And one such individual that we met a few weeks ago is Antwan Hauser. And right before we came on, I asked Brother Hauser how he wanted to be addressed. And he's got a lot behind him that he can go by, but he says simply right now, it says Antwan. So we'll see where that ends up. Antwan, Brother Hauser, thank you for joining us today. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization, Uplift?
All right. Well, thank you. And first, again, thank you for having me on the show. Thank you for the invite. I'm certainly humbled by it and certainly appreciate it. So a little bit about me. So again, my name is Antwan. I do carry many hats and many facets. However, Uplift is an organization in which I started back in 2007 upon getting out of the military. At that time in 2007, crime had started increasing in our city and in our state, and there was not a lot of younger preachers and younger ministers, if you will, on the fight. If there were, they were not very vocal and open. And so I reached out to a few of my brothers and fellow ministry partners and decided to come up with an organization where we could help, not to take away from what those were already doing, but to pay homage to them, but to also just give them a younger face in the community. And from that, Uplift spawned far beyond what I even imagined. Thanks be to God. We put on a youth conference every year in which we see anywhere from 150 plus youth. And we also bring community partners in where the resources are there. We have professional athletes that come in, different speakers, We also do a Martin Luther King Day program, which has been very successful. And so that's kind of what Uplift is. Our mission is just to influence future transformation. So the name Uplift is United Pastors and Leaders Influencing Future Transformation. And so that was my whole goal, just to be able to influence, again, the transformation. And I understand that in order to help youth, you have to help them holistically. We can't help them in school and forget about the home, and we can't help them at home and forget about the community. And so I just designed a program in which we could help them and touch them holistically.
Outstanding. I want to remind everybody that when we're talking about our CPWI program, we took the approach that we wanted to look at it from a mind, body, and soul perspective. And it's exactly what Brother Hauser is saying here. We wanted to be holistic in our approach. So with his Uplift program, it's covering two of those three, mind and soul. Because as we discussed, what he's doing is truly a ministry, because that's what impressed me with him, just meeting him for the first time, because he had, looks like he had a burning desire in his eyes to do what he was doing. So I told him we're not only going to get him on the show, but we're going to be supporting and sponsoring the program moving forward. Brother Hauser, can you tell us, and this is not prearranged question. Now I'm wondering, how do you measure success? How do you measure success in your program? Because everybody's looking at outcomes. So how do you track these kids and young men and young women, and how do you measure their success?
So the truth of the matter is, you're correct. Everybody wants to know what the outcome is, what statistics say, what are the numbers, and I am more of a people person. I like to connect with people. I'm very humbled, and I try to show that in everything that I do. And where I do have numbers, and I know how many people go through the program, and I know how many that go on to go to high school and how many graduates and that kind of thing. But here's a success story to me. I had a young man at a school that I was mentoring, and when I walked in, the young man day one didn't want to be there. And I knew he didn't want to be there. And I looked at him and I said, well, why is it that you don't want to be here? And he shrugged his shoulders, but I didn't put him out. I didn't talk about him or discriminate against him or make him leave the class. I let him stay. We continued. The next week came. He shrugged his shoulders, and I asked him, I said, well, why don't you want to be here? And he shrugged his shoulders, didn't say too much or anything. And what I told him was, I said, well, here's the thing. You may not want to be here, but you're here. Whatever reason it is, whether your parents mandated you, whether the school mandated you, you're here. And so let's make the most of it. I said, if you give me to week 4, I promise you'll love the program. Sure enough, week 4 came and he was excited about being there. But to answer your question more directly, where success came in, I remember halfway through the school year, the young man came to me. He said, Mr. Hauser, guess what? I said, yes, sir. How you doing? He said, I used to get sent to the principal's office 5 days a week. Now I only get sent 3 days a week. And where the other kids laughed at it, I said, well, that's success. That's good. That means you're learning something. That means you're applying some of the things that we're talking about. So now let's work on 3 days to 2 days or to 1 day. And he ended up transferring schools, and he came to me. And by the time he transferred schools, he wasn't getting in trouble anymore. But he came to me. He said, I really appreciate this program because it really helped me. That's one success story. I have another gentleman who he wanted to play basketball, real tall young man, wanted to play basketball. And he walked in the gymnasium to try out for the team. And the coach didn't pick him up for the team. And so the young man got mad, walked out and slammed the door. Well, there was another young man with him who had been in the program who stopped him and said, now, that's not what Mr. Hauser taught us. And that young man went back to the coach, shook his hand and looked him in the eye and said he apologized. Well, the coach ended up calling me, and he ended up putting him on the team. And the young man didn't want to be on the team because he said he was kind of skinny. He was tall but skinny, and said he didn't want anybody to push him around. But the coach put him on the team simply because he said that the way he came back and apologized and looked me in my eye and shook my hand and owned up to what he had done, that shows character. And I mean, the young man now is a success. He's successful. So
It's a great story.
Again,
Yeah.
Thank you. So I measure success by the interaction of the person. How does it change the person? How does it make you change? Now, I do have books about success. Coincidentally, I wrote a book called The ABCs of Successful Faith. And in the book, it is a coloring book and an activity book that my daughter helped me write. But it talks about the things that you do to be successful. The first thing is, and I won't go through A through Z, but you have to accept who you are. I'm not you and you're not me, and I have to be the best version of me. Me trying to be like somebody else does not make me be successful, because I have to use what God's given me and my God-given talents, and I have to use them to the best of my ability. And so those are just various things about how I measure success.
Wow. I'm glad I asked that question.
Good question and a good answer.
That was a great question, as it turned out, because I mean, I have so much respect and love for our brothers and sisters of all different nationalities and races, that, especially our brothers, I'll be honest with you, that have the calling to work with kids and the youth. Because a lot of the times, and I've done some work myself in drug interdiction and youth programming, and a lot of the time, what we see is exactly what Brother Hauser here just said. It's the personal contact with these kids. Would you see that to be the deciding factor, Antwan, with how you're able to connect with these youngsters?
Absolutely. It is all about relationship. So many young people get turned away. And I've even had them tell me before, we don't think you'll be here next week. So we're not going to give you a chance to open up to us. And we're not going to open up to you because you won't be here next week. Because so many people come in and try to help. And then as soon as the kid says something wrong to them, or as soon as the youth roll their eyes at them or what have you, that person gives up, they run, or they decide, well, we can't take it, or they're in it for the wrong reasons. And if you don't have the passion to do it, believe me, it will not work. And then, and also the other thing, one of the other methods that I do is I don't hide anything from the youth. A lot of times when we grow old, we don't want to tell the youth that we've been there and done that, but when you tell them that, I was there too, all of a sudden it helps them realize that, you're real, if you will. You're real and you're being 100%. So now I can open up to you because you relate to me. I went to Broad Ripple High School, wish it was still open.
Go Rockets.
Yeah, alumni, absolutely.
Yeah, I was with you until you said that. But go ahead.
See, but Broad Ripple taught me a whole lot. And not only Broad, but while I was at Broad Ripple, I played football, and I had teachers that told me I didn't have to come to class, and I took full advantage of that. And I didn't attend class a lot, and it was even to the point the recording would call my house, and it would say, your son or daughter missed school today or missed so many classes. My mom started asking me about it, and I had to tell her, I said, well, Mama, apparently the thing is broke if it calls every day. But in actuality, I wasn't going to class. Yeah. And so when the counselor, called me into the office and said, Antwan, you may not graduate. It put something in me, but I tell kids that story. Now I have 6 college degrees. I've ran my own business. I run my own nonprofit, military vet. I'm an IT for the federal government, working on building an all-boys school for Mount Carmel, where I'm the education program coordinator. I'm all over the place, and I do a whole lot of things. I used to facilitate for CLD. I just believe in helping and supporting other people. And that's another thing that I seem to find a big problem is why is it that we can't support each other? I know this is a COVID show, and one thing that COVID has taught me, or this year has taught me, is that there are a lot of people who are dealing with mental health issues, a lot of people who have issues, and a good way to fix those issues is simply to have somebody that can build a relationship. Kids have the problems as well. You've had the problem as well. But if we can't build a relationship with them, then we'll never get to that point to be able to help them.
Okay, so we're going to take a break, and I know we're probably pretty much, it's going to be a short break. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to continue our discussion with Mr. Antwan Hauser here on COVID-19 recovery when we come back.
During the COVID-19 emergency, community action agencies are open and here to ensure the well-being of families across the country. For over 50 years, we've been delivering life-changing services, solutions, and stability.
Contact your local community action agency serving Boone, Hamilton, Hendricks, and Marion counties for help during the COVID-19 emergency. We can assist with masks, hand sanitizers, food, shelter, transportation, and more. Apply today.
And we're back here on COVID-19 recovery, talking to Mr. Antwan Hauser, and from youth and keeping them in line and getting them to move forward. And I had a question for you, Mr. Hauser. What is lacking, though? The fact that the kid even needs us, other adults, to intervene. And I think I commend you for what you're doing, especially the school you're talking about developing at Mount Carmel. But what is lacking that they would need that? Because I always look at what the root cause is, and one thing that comes to my mind oftentimes is that when these children are making decisions, that they're making the decision. And, I grew up, it's not my decision. My parents control my life until you get to a certain age. So I don't care whether you want to do this or don't want to do it, you're going to do it because I said so. So with all that being said, what's your reaction to that in terms of what is really going on there?
Well, the short answer is, one, like you said, we didn't have a choice whether or not we were going to church or not. One, it has to be God. We have to put God first. But secondly, parents have to be involved, yes, but we have to hear the kids. That's the best answer I can give. I sit in different forums and I sit in meetings, and everybody's talking about what the kids need, but nobody sits down and talks to the kids. And that, when we can build that relationship piece and talk to them, then all of a sudden things I believe will start changing, because now we'll know what they need. But again, a lot of that is just parents' involvement, first and foremost, church, God, and we need churches who will step up and take the brunt of what our young kids are not getting.
I would agree with that 100%. And I would follow that with another question that's kind of coming from Kelly's. In your experiences, if you had to put an actual percent on the number of young, you work with young men and young women, correct?
Yes.
The number of kids you work with that are coming from a single family household, predominantly being raised by their mother. What percent would you say is that you encounter?
I would say it's probably at least 70%.
70%.
It's at least 70%. Yes.
Yeah.
It's at least 70% of them.
Right. So when you detail some of the things that are missing, one of the key things that jumps out to me is all consistently being the absence, more times than not, of the father in the home. And how when you're talking about, and I absolutely love this what you're doing with Mount Carmel with the all boys school. We attempted to do that a while back up in Gary when President Obama was in office, and the Congress at the time cut off all appropriations for not only that but for a lot of other things. So we went down the tubes. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing with Mount Carmel and this school for boys.
So at Mount Carmel, again, I'm the education program coordinator, and Pastor Williams' vision was, Mount Carmel sits in between 42nd Street, in between Post and Midhopper, and so it's a community that, and I don't want to say less impoverished, but it is a community that tends to be overlooked, and so there's a food desert, there is a financial desert, and where we sit, we're eloquently set in between Lawrence Township, Warren Township, as well as you have Felon, which is right there around the corner from us as well. However, there are a lot of kids who are not going to school, and we're not trying to take away from those school systems, but what we're trying to do is offer a different type of curriculum that will impact and also help children that look like us as well. So we'll have African-American literature, we'll have entrepreneurship, financial literacy, character development, which CLD is, we have signed an MOU with CLD, so they're doing the character development piece. And then we'll also have a media relations portion where, a lot of young men, they want to be the rapper, but they don't necessarily understand that behind the scenes are people who are really making a whole lot more money. And so we have a good curriculum that will actually help them in different facets of what they are actually getting at the school. Because again, where I have 6 college degrees and I'm an advocate of education, I also recognize not everybody will go to college. And so we're offering trades and bringing other partners in that can teach them different trades where they can still be successful. And the hope is that they go, that once they receive it, they come back and then give it back to the community.
Again, go ahead, Kelly.
And I think everything you're doing is just awesome. I guess one thing just popped in my head, and it kind of relates to what Al was saying in terms of raising these, boys, and oftentimes who don't have a father at home, and that we, as a part of that education, that they learn how to want to embrace fatherhood, to want to be a father. I feel like that's, if you don't have somebody that feels that way at home, how do you don't want to pass that down to the next generation. So I just want to throw that in there. It just popped in my head in terms of, you're not going to break that cycle unless, because I don't know why that is. Like if a woman, a young girl or whoever, gets pregnant, the first thing everybody does, they run. I mean, you've all seen Maury Povich. It's just in the Black community. And so why is that psychologically? Why don't we say, hey, man, I'm so glad I got a son coming? Everybody runs, except for the other 30% that we talked about. And that's just not going to cut it. It's just 30% of fathers taking care of their kids is just not going to cut it. Wow. So how do we break that? So if we can't change that person, how do we change the next generation that they need to be trained how to embrace that and to take responsibility? I just want to throw that in there. Sorry.
You're right. I've got a comment to make on that because I met Antwan's dad. And I met Antwan's dad about an hour before I met Antwan. Mm-hmm. And me being the military intel guy that I used to be, I put those two names together and kind of figured out they were related. So to your point, Kelly, I understand after meeting his dad how he ended up like he's doing what he's doing. He had a really great man to emulate. And that's the obligation that we all have, especially as men and as fathers. First of all, fathers, take care of your own household before you go out and try to take care of somebody else's kids in the household. Absolutely. And second, after that's done, then lend a helping hand to programs like Antwan. And Antwan, before we run out of time, and I know we're not terribly close, let everybody know how we can get in contact with you, what kind of assistance and help that you need and what we can do with CAGI and CPWI to be an assistance to the great work that you're already doing.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. So I can be reached, my website, antwanhauser.com. My phone number, office number is 317-747-7703. I can be emailed at antwantheauthor@gmail.com, as well as I'm all over social media at Antwan Hauser.
Okay, outstanding. Now, real quick, tell us a little bit about how COVID impacted your program.
So it really kind of hindered it quite a bit, and I'll make it brief. It kind of really impacted it quite a bit because by not being seen and things shutting down, we couldn't really do what we needed to do. We did not have a virtual program established. However, it actually helped and propelled to what I'm doing now, in that during the COVID, it allowed me to write some books. Those books then, with kids being at home, it allowed me to go in schools and actually deliver books where now teachers can say, well, here's an activity book that, you know, your kids can do while they're at home. And now it's taking some stress off of the youth. But now I'm actually, and this is the first I'm sharing it. So here we go. I'm launching a new initiative now, which is an actual writing class. This is the first time I was going to announce it later on today via social media, but my publishing company has partnered with me and we're working hand in hand. And COVID has caused, again, mental health to come out in a lot of people. And there are a lot of people who have stories to share about, you know, whether they lost, somebody in their family lost life, and just how to cope with it. But a lot of these people don't have avenues to speak. Well, I have a great publishing company, and I want to bring these individuals in that have been affected by COVID, by crime, what have you, to be able to tell their story. We'll write it out, and then we're going to actually publish it with their authorization. We will turn it into a publication. Well, it'll consist of multiple people's story. So okay. I'm really excited about that.
Excellent.
Okay. And so how can they get in touch with you to do that?
So again, they can email me at antwantheauthor@gmail.com, or feel free to call 317-747-7703.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Antwan Hauser, thanks so much for joining us here on COVID-19 recovery. It's been a really enlightening conversation, and hopefully you'll come back.
Absolutely. Anytime you need me, I'll be here. And I certainly appreciate it again. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.